My beautiful grade 10s, welcome back to another video. Alright, so the Lord has given us another beautiful day, and let's do some maths. Alright, so functions. Okay, so today we've covered straight lines, we've covered parabola, and today we're going to be doing some hyperbola. Okay, or hyperbola, as I like to say. Alright, so jumping straight into it. Alright, so if I'm going to take these points, okay, I take all my x values here, and I substitute in x in my form that I've given you here. Alright, so this is a basic form for a parabola. Sorry, not parabola, a hyperbola. Right? That's a basic form for a hyperbola. Alright, so you can look at that, get used to it. Alright, so if I substitute negative 4 in for x over here, you're going to get negative 1 over 4. Alright, so let's go plot that quickly. Okay, so I go to negative 4 for x, and I go to negative a quarter, which is over here somewhere. Alright, then I go to negative 3. If I substitute negative 3 in there for x, you're going to get negative 1 over 3. Okay, let's go plot that point. So I go to negative 3, and I go to negative a third, which is over there somewhere. Alright, and if I substitute negative 2 in there for x, I'm going to get negative a half. So let's go to negative 2 and negative a half. It's over there somewhere. Okay, now my dots are starting to form some kind of shape. Right, so I go to negative 1. Okay, if I put negative 1 in for x, you're going to get negative 1. Alright, so I'm going to say negative 1, negative 1. Alright, and if I say 0, if I substitute 0 in there, your calculator is going to give you undefined. Okay, so that's the new thing now. Okay, that's the new thing for hyperbolas now. Okay, so undefined value. Okay, we're going to get to that now. We're going to wait for that. Alright, and now if I go to 1, if I go to 1, alright, and I substitute 1 in there, you're going to get 1, alright, so there we go. Alright, if I substitute 2 in, okay, we're going to get a half, so let's put in a half there, right, so it's a half. If I put 3 in there, I'm going to get a third, so I go to 3 and a third, so it's over there. Alright, so I'm starting to form some kind of shape here. Alright, so that's 1 over 3. Alright, so if I substitute it in a half, okay, if I substitute in a half here, right, I know I don't have it in the table here, but if I substitute it in a half, 0,5, what is 1 divided by 0,5? It's 2, alright, so I'll plug in 2 over there. Okay, and the smaller I get, I'm going to start having dots getting closer and closer to my y-axis, and the same on this side, alright. If I plug in negative a half, I'm going to have negative 2. Okay, and we're going to keep getting closer and closer to my y-axis there. Can you see that these dots are starting to form some kind of shape over here? Alright, so let's join that. Remember, I'm not touching my y-axis. There's my y-axis, and I'm not touching my x-axis at all. Okay, so my dots are getting closer and closer to those. Okay, but they're never touching them. Okay, so I'm going to keep curving. I'm going to curve right straight through, and I'm getting closer and closer to my x-axis and my y-axis, but I'm never actually touching them. Okay, and the same thing over here. Okay, and I'm going to curve, and there we go. Alright, okay, and that is a basic hyperbola. Right, so just a few things that are new now. Okay, firstly, can you see that this graph, there's different parts to it? Okay, so we've got one part over here in the first quadrant, quadrant 1, right, and we've got a second part in quadrant 3, right, and it's positive. Okay, this is a positive parabola. Okay, we're going to see what happens when it's negative. We're going to see that later. Alright, so if I look at this, that's a normal hyperbola. Okay, and the new things, okay, are my asymptotes. Alright, this undefined value over here, this undefined value, okay, that's new. Alright, so what is an asymptote? So an asymptote is basically a line. Okay, so if I had to draw a dotted line on my x-axis over here, so it's a line that my graph will never touch. Okay, can you see that this graph, it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it's going to keep getting closer and closer and closer. Okay, going to keep getting closer and closer and closer to that line, but it's never ever going to touch. Okay, So that's basically what an asymptote is. It's never going to touch there, and it's going to turn. Same thing here at the top here. It's going down, going down, going down, turning, curving, and now it's going straight, and it's never going to touch that asymptote over there. Okay, and the same thing over here. If I go up, okay, can you see that this line is just going straight here? It's never going to touch my y-axis. Okay, so I've got a vertical asymptote, which I can indicate with a dotted line. Okay, always indicate your asymptotes with a dotted line. Alright, so I've got a vertical asymptote, which is called x equals 0, because everywhere on my y-axis, my x value is 0. Alright, and then I've also got a horizontal asymptote. Okay, and that's called y is equal to 0. Okay, y equals 0. Okay, and that's my horizontal asymptote. Okay, because everywhere on my x-axis, my y value is 0. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let's see if we can dive into the rest of this video. Okay, so knowing this, okay, so we know we've got two asymptotes, a vertical and a horizontal asymptote. Okay, and we know that it's positive. Okay, it's a positive hyperbola in my quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. Okay, so there we go. So let's look at this. Okay, so if I told you to draw this, okay, so this is just a normal y is equal to 1 over x. So what we saw here, okay, it's just a neater version of this. So you just used a program to program that. Right, so that's y equals 1 over x. So what do you think y equals 1 over x plus 1 is going to look like if I add 1? Okay, this graph, this blue graph, is just going to go up 1 unit. Okay, so if I go to the next slide here, there it is. There's my orange. Okay, here's my orange. So the orange one, okay, let me change color here maybe. So my orange one is y is equal to 1 over x plus 1. All right, and can you see now that my horizontal asymptote, so if you look for the blue graph, look at the blue graph, my horizontal asymptote is here, all right, which is y is equal to 0. Okay, but if I add 1, okay, if I go back here and I add 1, okay, I'm going to go up 1, so my horizontal asymptote is going up by 1, so it's going to intersect where y is 1. Alright, so now y is equal to 1. Can you see that? Notice that this, whatever I'm adding here is whatever my asymptote is called. Okay, just notice that for now. Alright, and now if I tell you to draw this green graph over here, okay, so now I'm taking 1 over x, so the blue graph. Okay, look at the blue one. Alright, and I'm minusing 1. So what do you think is going to happen to the blue graph? We're going to minus 1 exactly. Alright, so I'm minusing 1, and can you see there? There I minused 1. Alright, and now look where my horizontal asymptote is for my green graph. Alright, can you see that my horizontal asymptote moved down 1? So now my horizontal asymptote is y is equal to negative 1. Okay, for the blue graph, it's y is equal to 0. And for the orange graph, it's y is equal to positive 1. Okay, so notice this. Notice, are they the same? Yes. Okay, notice here, 0, nothing. Okay, plus 0, nothing. Okay, can you notice it's the same? Right, and the same thing for the last one. Okay, negative 1, negative 1. Okay, I want you to notice that. Okay, so my horizontal asymptote is going to be whatever I'm adding on at the end here for my hyperbola. Alright. Okay, hoping that's making sense. So that's what basic hyperbolas look like, guys. Okay, so just remember, alright, we also have, for all three of these graphs, we've got, let me change here. Okay, we've got a vertical asymptote as well. Right, going down, straight down. Okay, and that vertical asymptote in grade 10 will always be x is equal to 0. Okay, that's only in grade 10, okay, because in grade 11 and 12, you're going to be shifting this left and right. Okay, but we don't have to worry too much about that. Okay, so don't stress too much. Okay, all right, I'm hoping that's making sense. All right, so let's look at the next slide here. So let's see what happens when we change the gradient. Okay, so just observe. You don't need to draw anything. I just want you to see, just get used to seeing the graph, seeing the function. All right, let's see. All right, so if I increase this to 4, all right, remember in the previous ones, right? It was just 1, right? But if I increase it to 4, can you see that the distance over here, okay, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger? The bigger my gradient is, the bigger this distance becomes. Alright, so if you look here, going over here, let's go to my blue one. Right, can you see that the distance over here, can you see that distance? Right, it's basically just 1 block. But if I increase it to 4, it's now 2 blocks. Okay, going through 2 blocks diagonally there. Right, and if I increase it to 8, it's almost 3 blocks. Right, can you see that? Can you see that the distance there is getting bigger and bigger? Alright, now what happens? If I decrease it, okay, can you see that the distance now becomes smaller? Alright, so that's what happens when you change the gradient. Okay, and now what happens if I have a negative gradient? Okay, negative gradient. So what happened with our straight lines? So if I visualize straight lines, okay, that's a normal straight line. What happened if I had a negative? That's normal positive. Okay, so this is positive. Right, what happened to the negative? We flipped it on our x-axis. We flipped it. Okay, so it looks like that. And that is our negative one. Alright, so positive going up to the right and negative going down to the right. Can you see that I just took this part of here, I moved it up, it became this. Took this part, moved it down, and it became this. Alright, and the same thing with the parabola. Okay, so if I take all this out, okay, and I had a parabola, normal parabola. In my previous video, we had something that looked like this. Okay, that's positive, the smiley face. Right, and when I had negative gradient, what happened to the parabola? It became frowny face. Alright, can you see that? Okay, so we just flipped it on our x-axis. So we just took this and we just flipped it down. Okay, so it's going to be the same thing with our hyperbola. So what do you think is going to happen? Alright, so if a normal hyperbola, if it's positive, okay, we're in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. Alright, what do you think is going to happen if I make it a negative gradient? If I flip it, if I flip this on my x-axis, what do you think is going to happen? Good, quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. Okay, so quadrant 1, we're going to flip it down to quadrant 4, and whatever was in quadrant 3 is going to go up to quadrant 2. Okay, we're just going to flip it on our x-axis. Alright, reflect it on our x-axis. That's a better word mathematically. Okay, alright, so there's my negative, and now I'm in quadrant 2 and 4. Alright, okay, so let's see how we're going to find the equation of my hyperbola. Alright, so to find the equation of any graph, what do I have to do first? I always have to start with the general equation. Good, so always the general equation of that graph. Alright, so you need to be able to recognize immediately what type of graph it is. Okay, what type of function. Okay, so this is a hyperbola, and this is the general equation for my hyperbola. Alright, so the A is my gradient. Okay, and my C value this time, it's no longer my y-intercept. Okay, like in my my parabola and my straight line, but now it's my horizontal asymptote. Okay, my horizontal asymptote. Alright, so now knowing that, let's see if we can find the equation of these hyperbolas that I'm going to give you. Okay, so moving on to the next one, next slide here. Alright, so if I tell you, okay, so I give you this point, I say it's 1 and 1. Okay, so now let's just recognize, firstly, a hyperbola. What's new about a hyperbola? Something new. Right, we have our asymptotes. Let's go put those in. Okay, so let's recognize them. Alright, so I've got a hyperbola. Okay, so I know I'm going to have an asymptote over here. And that's where the graph is never going to touch. Right, and I can put the equation in there, y equals 0. Right, and now I don't only have a horizontal one, I also have a vertical asymptote. Right, and in grade 10, right, it's always going to be x is equal to 0. Right, for now. Alright, and now, how do I start to find the equation of any graph? Any graph. I always start with the general equation. Okay, so y is equal to a over x plus c. Alrighty. Okay, so in order to find my C value, what is my C value again? Let's go back. If you forgot, C value is my horizontal asymptote. Alright, so what is my horizontal asymptote? 0. Alright, so my C value is going to be 0. Alright, nice. Okay, got my C value. Alright, now I need to go and look for my A value. Okay, I don't have that yet. I need to go find it first. Alright, so let's substitute what I have. Okay, so I've got y is equal to A over x plus 0. Okay, so I don't have to put that plus 0 there, obviously. Okay, so that's what I have now. Okay, so I need to go and find A. Okay, so remember in my parabola, how did I find that A value? I had to substitute in for x and y. Alright, and how am I going to do that? Where am I going to get an x and y value? From my graph. Okay, there's a point here. Okay, they gave me 1, 1. Alright, so y is 1, x is 1. Alright, and what is A divided by 1? Just A and 1. Okay, so A is equal to 1. Right, that means that the equation for this function of my hyperbola is going to be y is equal to 1 over x plus 0. Okay, which I don't have to put there. Okay, alright, and that's my equation for hyperbola, guys. Nice and easy. Alright, so let's see if you can do the next one. Alright, nice and easy. Great, pause the video, see if you can do it by yourself quickly, and then we can go through it together. Okay. Alright, so I assume you've paused it, you've done it. Alright, so the first thing I want to identify, okay, is I want to first put in my asymptotes. Alright, remember the hyperbola always has 2 asymptotes. That's 2, it has a horizontal and a vertical. Okay, my vertical one, nice and easy. I know it's always x equals 0. Very good. So it's on my x-axis here. Okay. Right. So the reason I'm just moving it a little bit off of my, sorry, it's on my y-axis. Sorry, not my x-axis. Alright, the reason why I'm moving it just a little bit off my y-axis is just that I can see that dotted line. Just so my teacher can see that I know what I'm talking about. Alright, so that's x equals 0. That's on my y-axis. Okay. And then there's also a horizontal asymptote. And remember, an asymptote is a line that my graph never touches. So what is my horizontal asymptote here? Is it y equals 0? No, because the graph cuts my x-axis here. Alright, so remember, the asymptote is a line that my graph never touches. So where is my horizontal asymptote now? It's over here. Good. Okay, can you see that this hyperbola just moved up 1? Okay, we moved up 1. Right, so my horizontal asymptote now is y is equal to 1. Alright, okay, I hope that's making sense. Alright, so a nice easy way to notice that is just to see where's my hyperbola curving. Alright, and where is it getting close to? It's getting close to 1. Okay, it's not touching 1, it's getting close there. And the same thing over here at my top one. Okay, it's going down and it's getting closer and closer to y equals 1. Alright, so there's my horizontal asymptote. Okay. Alright, so I put in my asymptotes. Let's start with my general equation. So y is equal to a over x plus c. C value is always my horizontal asymptote. So c is equal to, what's my horizontal asymptote? 1. Very good. Alright, then I substitute back in the equation that I have, all the stuff that I found out. So I found c. So I've got plus 1 over there. Alright, now how am I going to find my a value? I need to find my x and y. Alright, where am I going to get x and y from? I'm going to get it from here. Alright, x and y. Okay, what is this point? Label it for me. This coordinate. What's the x value? It's 1. And what is the y value? 2. Awesome stuff. Alright, so I'm going to substitute in here. Okay, so I've got an x value of 1. Right, and I've got a y value of 2. And I'm plussing c over there. Plus 1. Alright, so what is a divided by 1? It's just a. Okay, I'm going to take the 1 over. Becomes negative 1. Okay, and I'm going to get 2 minus 1, which is just 1. Okay, so what is now the equation of my hyperbola? Y is equal to 1 over x plus, what is my C value? C. Well, 1. Okay, plus 1. Sorry, guys. Alright, okay, and that is my equation for this hyperbola. Nice and easy, okay? Alright, I hope you're getting the hang of it now. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so pause the video, see if you can do this by yourself. Alright, remember the first thing we need to notice first is where are my asymptotes. Alright, go do it. Okay, so I assume you've done it, you pause the video. Alright, let's check. Okay, so why I know that always I have a vertical asymptote and a horizontal asymptote. I've got two. Alright, so my first one is always on my y-axis. Okay, straight down the middle. That's my vertical one in grade 10. Alright, so that is x is equal to 0. Alright, and now let's go see where my horizontal one is. Okay, my horizontal one. Right, let me just follow this graph. I can see it's turning here, and it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer to 1. Right, and the same thing over here. It's getting closer and closer. It's turning closer and closer and closer and closer to 1 over there. Okay, so I can put in my horizontal asymptote of 1 over there. Okay. Alright, so that is y is equal to positive 1 over there. Alright, so I start with my general equation. Okay, so y is equal to a over x plus c. Okay, my c value is always my horizontal asymptote. So my horizontal asymptote is y equals 1. Okay, so c is equal to 1. Very easy, nice and easy. Okay, then I substitute back in y is equal to a over x plus 1. Alright, to find a, I need to substitute in a point on my graph. Okay, but I don't see any dots here. They didn't give me anything. Okay, so now what now? Now I see this. Okay, what is that? That is my x-intercept. It's where my graph is cutting my x-axis. Alright, and what is that point over there? Do I have a point? Yes, I do. I've got x is 1 and my y is 0. Alright, so sometimes if they don't give you a point, they want you to go and look for it. Okay, so that is a nice example. Right, so I know that my x value there is 1. So I've got a over 1 plus 1 and my y value 0. Right, so a over 1 is just a, and I'm going to take the 1 over, it becomes negative 1, and now I know that my a value is minus 1. Alright, so what is the equation of this hyperbola? Y is equal to negative 1 over x. Is that it? No, and I've got a c value of plus 1 there. Alright, okay, and that is my equation of my hyperbola, of this one, in this specific example. Alright, okay, hope that's nice and easy for you guys. Alright, let's check this one out. Okay, so I want you to pause the video, see if you can do it by yourself, and then we'll do it together. Alright, go for it. Alright, so I assume you've done it already. Alright, so let's look at this. For a hyperbola, I know I always have how many asymptotes? I've got two asymptotes. I've got a horizontal one and a vertical one. Okay, my vertical asymptote is always straight down here, okay? X equals 0. Okay, so it's on my y-axis. Okay, straight down the middle there, dotted line, x equals 0. Alright, now let's follow my graph. Let's see what's happening. Right, it's turning, and it's not touching. Positive 2 over here. Okay, I can see at the top here it's also doing the same things. Turning, and it's never touching. Positive 2. Alright, so I'm going to put in my horizontal asymptote here. Alright, and what am I going to call that horizontal asymptote? Y is equal to positive 2. Okay, alright, to find the equation of any function, okay, we always start with general equation. Y is equal to a over x plus c, right? And my c value is always my horizontal asymptote. Okay, in this case it's 2. Alright, so my c value is going to be 2. Alright, there we go. Found 2. Let's substitute back in there. A over x plus 2. So that's my c value. Right, and to find my a value, I always need to substitute in for x and y. Where am I going to get x and y from? From my graph, right? Is there any point here that I can see clearly? There's a point. Oh, right there. Right, what is that? That is called my x-intercept. Okay, and give me that point there. -1 and 0. Nice, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to take -1 for x, okay, over a. So a over -1 plus 2, and my y value is 0. All right, and now we're going to take this 2 over. It's going to become -2, and a divided by -1 is -a. And to find a by itself, I need to divide by -1, so I've got a is equal to 2. Right, a is equal to 2. Alright, so what is my equation for this hyperbola? Y is equal to 2 over x plus 2. Right, so my c value was 2, my a value was 2. A value was 2. Alright, and that is my equation for that hyperbola. Right, nice and easy. Okay. Okay, let's try this one over here. Right, try that one, and I'm going to give you this point over here, and I'm going to say, okay, this is 3 and 1. Okay, I'm going to be nice to you. Gave you that. Alright, go find the equation quickly. Alright, so I assume you've done it. Nice and easy. Okay, so let's go identify. What must I always identify? My asymptotes. Alright, so I know that immediately my first one is straight down the middle here. Okay, and that is my vertical asymptote, which is always x equals 0. Alright, and then I always have a horizontal asymptote as well, and I see it's never touching 2. Okay, it's getting closer and closer there. Okay, and it's getting there. Alright, and you want to have somewhat of the same distance over here. Alright, but usually they will also give it to you in a test usually. Alright. Okay, so now, okay, I'm going to label this y is equal to 2. Nice. Right, so I start with my general equation. Y is equal to a over x plus c. C value is always my horizontal asymptote, which is 2 in this case. Alright, and then to find my a, I'm just going to substitute back in here. Right, how am I going to find a? I substitute in for x and y. Where am I going to find that? On a point on the graph. Alright, so I'm going to substitute in 3 for x, okay, and 1 for y, plus 2 there. Right, take the 2 over, becomes -2, so I've got -1 there. Right, so 1 minus the 2 is -1, and I've got a over 3. Right, to find a, I multiply by 3 on both sides, multiply by 3 there. So I've got -3, and those 3's cancel, and I'm left with a. Right, so what is my equation of this hyperbola? Y is equal to, good, -3 over x plus 2. Fantastic. Alright, awesome stuff. Okay, so now let's look at this. Let's visualize what these hyperbolas are going to look like. Alright, so firstly, okay, if I look at this hyperbola, okay, let's just visualize quickly, roughly. Okay, what is it going to look like? Okay, which quadrants am I going to be in? I'm in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3, alright, because it's positive. Alright, and we know we're going to have an asymptote of x equals 0. Alright, always, my vertical one. And I know that my other asymptote, my horizontal one, whatever my c value is, so that's y is equal to 0. Right, and I know it's never going to touch this. It's going to look something like this. Right, so I still have to put all the correct points in. Right, but it looks something like that in that kind of line. Okay, looks something like that. Okay, so now what am I going to do? Okay, can you see that this hyperbola is never touching my x-axis? All right, and remember with parabola, when we said that it wasn't touching the x-axis, or if it was only touching once, right, that was for the parabola. All right, what did we do? We just picked points. All right, we just picked points. All right, and we made sure that our graph went through those points. All right, so it's going to be the same thing with hyperbola. All right, so because my hyperbola is not touching my x-axis at all, all right, I'm going to take control, right, and I'm just going to pick a point, pick any point. All right, to make it nice and convenient, all right, I'm going to just choose 1, and I'm just going to choose 1 for this time. All right, so I'm going to have 1 point. So my first point, point 1, right? I'm just going to pick a point, okay, and I've chosen to pick 1 for x. So I've got y is equal to 1 over 1, which is just 1. Y equals 1. Alright, so what is the point over here? Give me my coordinate that I'm going to plot. What is my x? I chose x, which is 1. And what did I get when I chose 1 for x? I got 1 for y. Right, so that's my point. So let's go plot that. It's right over there. Right, so I must make sure that my graph goes through that point. Okay, 1 and 1. Okay, alright, and now I need another point, okay, because I need to know where this part of the graph, okay, this quadrant 3 part of the graph, I need to know which point that's going to go through, okay. So again, I'm going to use the reflection. I'm going to use -1, same in my as in my parabola. Right, so about 0.2. Alright, I'm going to take this and I'm going to substitute in -1. Okay, so I've got 1 over -1, and that means y is equal to -1. Alright, so what is my point there? Give me my coordinate. X value. What did I choose for x? I chose x, -1. Alright, what did I get for y? -1. Alright, so let's go plot that. So I've got -1, -1. Alright, and I know that that is -1 and -1. Alright, let's put in my asymptotes that I know already for my hyperbola. I'm going to put it in. Okay. Oopsie. Okay. You guys are going to have a ruler when you do this. Okay, so just put that in there. Right, and my vertical asymptote is always x equals 0. Alright, and what is my horizontal asymptote? Yes, y equals 0. Remember, I just did it here in the rough. Okay, so I know it's over there. Okay, straight here. Oh, that's actually pretty straight. Well done, Mr. In the math dog. Alright, so we know that y is equal to 0 there. That's my horizontal asymptote. Okay, so now I know what a hyperbola looks like. I know it curves. I know it never touches my asymptote. It gets very close, but it never touches. Alright, so I'm just going to draw this right nice and close, and I'm going to know I'm going to curve here. Start curving. Right, and I'm going to get close to my x-axis, but I'm never going to touch it. And I put arrows on the end there. Right, and the same thing over here. Okay, nice and close to my x-axis, and I'm going to curve away. And I'm going to get nice and close to my y-axis, curving away. And I'm going to put arrows like that. Okay, and then I mustn't forget to name my graph. 1 over x. Okay, and there we go. And that's how you sketch a hyperbola. Alright, so please put those points in there, guys. Alright, and that is when my hyperbola never touches my x-axis. Alright, we're just going to choose points. We're going to pick any point we want. Okay, take control of your life. Alright, so let's look at the next one. Okay, see if you can go and sketch that yourself. Okay, so first, before you go and sketch it, okay, visualize what it looks like first. Do a little rough sketch on the side, just so you have a generalization of what it's going to look like. Okay, so pause the video, go do it. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. Okay, go for it. Right, so I assume you've done it already. Let's see if you got it right. All right, so visualizing this, I see that that's a negative. All right, so let me draw my Cartesian plane nice and lightly here. Okay, on the side, I'm going to do some rough sketching here. All right, I don't have to put any of the axes in. All right, so I know which quadrants am I in. Which quadrants? I'm in quadrant 2 and 4. Fantastic. All right, because it's negative. All right, so I know it's going to be there somewhere. All right, let's put in my vertical asymptote always. X equals 0. I know that. All right, and my horizontal asymptote. Let's go see what my C value is. Let's go see what my C value is. All right, so I see that my C value, okay, I did it again, okay, is 0. All right, so what is my horizontal asymptote? Y equals 0. Fantastic. All right, it's there on my x-axis. Okay, so I know that the graph is going to look something along those lines there. Okay, it looks something like that. Okay, so now let's see if we can mimic that, but we need to put in our points, remember. All right, so to put points in, what do I do? How do I get my points? Good, I just pick whatever I want. All right, take control of your life. All right, so point 1. Okay, but I'm going to keep it nice and simple. Point 1. All right, I'm going to substitute in 1 again because it's nice and simple to work with 1. Okay, so y is equal to -2 over, okay, positive 1. Okay, so I'm choosing positive 1 now. Alright, and what does that give you? Negative 2 for y. Alright, so that's a little bit different than the previous one. Alright, so what's my point that I'm going to plot? My coordinate. What did I choose for x? I chose positive 1 for x. Alright, and what did I get for y? Negative 2. Alright, let's go plot that. So I go to 1 and I go down to negative 2, and there's my dot over there. Okay, so I know that that is 1 and negative 2. Okay, now for point 2. Okay, point 2. I'm now going to do the reflection of that 1. Okay, what is the reflection of that positive 1? I'm now going to use negative 1. Alright, so y is equal to negative 2 over negative 1. Okay, so remember when you're working with a negative, okay, you're working with negative 2 over negative 1. So there's two negatives this time. Okay, two negatives. And what is negative 2 divided by negative 1? Positive 2. Fantastic. All right, let's look at that. Right, so what is my coordinate? Negative 1 for x and positive 2 for y. All right, let's go plot that. Go to negative 1, go to positive 2. There's my dot. All right, let's go put in that point. So we've got negative 1 and positive 2. Okay, and I know what my asymptotes are, okay, because I did it here lightly on the side, so I immediately know I can go put those in. X equals 0. Okay, let's go put that dotted line in there. Alright, dotted line. That's my vertical, right? And my horizontal one, I know that was 0. Okay, so I can put in my horizontal one here. Nice dotted line there. Right, so I've got y equals 0. Right, and now I know that the hyperbola, okay, it's never touching my asymptote. It's getting very close. Okay, and it's going to curve on the dot that I drew there. Right, and it's going to go all the way up. All the way up. Okay. Alright, and then again, nice and close to my y-axis here. Right, and I'm going to curve at that dot. Right, and I'm getting close and close to my x-axis there. Right, and I must name this graph. Let's name it here. Y is equal to negative 2 over x. Okay, fantastic, guys. Alright, you guys are so smart. You're doing the things. Alright, so tap yourself in the back if you got that right. Well done. Alright, now let's look at some other examples. Okay, now what can we observe firstly? Okay, so we have already observed with these two examples that my C value was 0. Okay, 0, and I never cut my x-axis once. I didn't cut it once. When I don't cut it, when I don't cut my x-axis, I choose my points and I sketch my graph. Okay, same thing over here. My graph is not cutting my x-axis. Why? Because I've got an asymptote there. Alright? So it's not cutting there. I'm going to choose points, plug it in, sketch. Easy peasy. Alright. Now let's look at these ones. Okay, so let's visualize some of these parabolas now. Oh, sorry, not parabolas, hyperbolas. Oh, I'm getting confused here. Let's look at these hyperbolas. Alright, now I'm adding a C value here. Alright, let's go visualize quickly what it's going to look like. Okay, put it here on the side. Lightly. So I know it's negative. Okay, no, it's negative. So which quadrants? It's quadrant 2 and 4. Right, and I'm adding 1. Okay, so put in my horizontal asymptote, x equals 0. Sorry, my vertical asymptote, x equals 0. And my horizontal asymptote, it's going to be 1. Y equals 1. We know that already from the beginning of the video. Alright, and I know I'm going to curve here in the second quadrant. And I know I'm going to curve here in the fourth quadrant. And what do you see here? I see an x-intercept. Alright, so now my hyperbola is now cutting my x-axis. Alright, so when I'm cutting the x-axis or the y-axis, we can call that the x or y intercept. So here I've got an x-intercept. Okay, what do I know about x-intercepts? On my x-axis, my y value is always 0. Alright, now I'm going to go find that x-intercept there. Alright, so now let's go find what that x-intercept is going to be. Alright, so if I substitute y 0, okay, negative 1 over x plus 1. Alright, let me take the 1 over. So I've got negative 1 there, equals negative 1 over x. Alright, now in order to do this, okay, so now algebra is going to leave some of you. Alright, so what must I do here to find x? Can you see that x is at the bottom there? Yes, okay, so how am I going to get it to the top? Alright, so I'm going to multiply both sides by x. Let me multiply both sides by x. Alright, so those x's are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with negative 1 on this side. Right, and this x times negative 1 is negative x. Yo, can you see that? Now my x is at the top. Right, but I want just x. I don't want negative x. Divide by negative 1. Divide by negative 1. Alright, so x is equal to positive 1. Alright, so what is my coordinate for my x-intercept that I just found? Right, what is the x value that I just found? I found 1. Right, and what is the y value? What is the y value always on my x-axis? Y is equal to 0. Right, let's go plot that. 1 and 0. Right, and now let's label that. So that is 1 and 0. Right, and now let's go put in everything else. Let's go put in my asymptotes. So I've got my vertical asymptote at x equals 0. Because on my y-axis, x is always 0. Okay, and I know what my horizontal asymptote was. Y equals 1. I got that in the beginning. My sketch equals 1. There it is. Okay, so y is equal to 1. Okay, and now let's go put in our graph. Okay, let's go put in our hyperbola. Alright, so let's draw this fourth quadrant one quickly. Alright, so we know close to the y-axis. Alright, and we are going to go through that point there. I'm going to get close to my asymptote there. Alright, and there we go. That's the fourth quadrant. Okay, now the second quadrant. Okay, I don't have to have any points there. Alright, so I'm just going to draw straight. Okay, what it's going to sort of look like. And there we go. Boom, boom, shakalaka. There we go. Right, nice guys. And that's my hyperbola if it cuts the x-axis. Right, so if it cuts the x-axis, we're going to go find where it cut the x-axis. Alright, we investigators, alright? We detectives, we want to know where. Where did it cut the x-axis? I know it's cutting, but I want to know where. Alright, so let's go find it, and that's how we find it. Alright, so last example for today. Alright, so go and do this one quickly. Okay, pause the video, see if you can do it by yourself, and see if you can get it right. Alright, okay, so I assume you've done it. Let's see if we can do this together. Alright, so lightly on the side here, I'm going to visualize what it's going to look like. Alright, so I've got a vertical asymptote of x equals 0 always. Right, and what is my horizontal asymptote there? Again, it's positive 1. Okay, y equals positive 1. Alright, and which quadrants am I in? Because this is positive, so which quadrants? 1, okay, 1 and 3. Okay, can you see that in my third quadrant, I'm cutting the x-axis there? Okay, can you see that? Okay, but now I want to know what? I want to know where that is because I'm curious, all right? I'm a detective, all right? I want to know where, all right? So that's my x-intercept. X-intercept, y is always 0. So let's substitute 0 equals 1 over x plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to take the 1 over, negative 1, 1 over x, multiply both sides by x. That's going to give me negative x equals, cancel those x's, equals 1. Okay, to get x, I'm going to divide by negative 1 both sides. Right, and x is going to be negative 1. Alright, so the point I'm going to plot is negative 1 and 0. Okay, so the negative 1 comes from what I just found. And the 0 comes from what I substituted in. Right, substituted 0 for y. Okay, now let's put in my asymptotes quickly. Okay, so I've got a vertical asymptote of x equals 0. Put that in there. X equals 0. And I've got a y equals 1. So that's my horizontal asymptote. Okay, it's my c value. Y equals 1. Okay, and now let's go draw this. Okay, so I'm going to plot this negative 1 and 0, this point here. Okay, so I plotted it there. Alright, and let's label it. That's -1 and 0. Right, and I know that my graph is close to my horizontal asymptote, and it's going to curve and it's going to come down, cutting my x-axis there and coming close to my y-axis. Okay, there we go. Alright, and then this top one, I can just draw what it sort of is going to look like. There we go, and there we go. Okay, and then I mustn't forget, okay, I forgot to put the name here for this one. Y is equal to -1 over x plus 1. So I'm going to put the name over here as well. Y equals 1 over x plus 1. Alrighty. Okay guys, I hope this video was beneficial for you guys, and I hope it helps you. Please like and subscribe, share it with your friends so that all your friends can also get the best marks possible for their maths exams. Okay, so I hope this helped, and have an amazing day. Alright, okay, cheers guys.